Mr. Pinkerton, please. Thanks for the correction.
If I could do an introduction really quickly.
I'm sorry.
Steve Pinkerton has been around for a couple, 3 years now as general manager at the CSD. And since he's come on under his tutelage, a significant movement has happened in terms of the development of our community. And he has been unbelievably supportive of the development and the constant quest and search we have for funding for school facilities. He's been an excellent partner, and his communication is top quality, and he's an excellent professional. So we're excited to have him present about the parks and help the facilities committee, but I think it's crucial that everyone knows that he is he's been a game changer for our district relationship and the movement in the community.
You're far too kind. I can tell you that we are doing everything we can to keep the subdivisions going in an orderly and manageable manner right now, and it's not easy. But I think in any community like this, the schools are the real core of the community, and we want to make sure that, just as we want to make sure that we have all our infrastructure put in place consistent with growth, we want to make sure the same thing happens with the schools. There's nothing worse than the day that someone would have to come in here and talk about modular buildings or transfers, all those types of things. So it's a goal of ours to make sure that we work in tandem as much as possible with the district. And certainly the overall plan of the community has always been really focused on, every neighborhood's focused on a neighborhood school and a park. So the district and both districts working together. Some other time we can hopefully update you on incorporation, where we'll go from a district to a city, but we've still got a lot of work to do on that front. But I think you'll hear a lot more about that later this year. But we're thinking that within the next 12 to 18 months, we will be having, it would take a community vote for us to incorporate. But until then, we have lots of paperwork to go through and lots of time to spend with the county. But it is probably good timing on that, and it kind of works into this presentation. I've actually been here not 3 years, 2 years, 8 months, and 15 days so far. That's what I'm counting.
But who's counting?
Who's counting? But during that time, we've certainly changed drastically. I mean, really since 2013, 2014, the rocket ship took off again in the neighborhoods, and we're still trying to catch up once again. But I think by the end of next year, we'll be up to about 30,000 residents. And if you recall back during the recession, we never want repeated, we were about 96, maybe 10,000 residents during that time. So we've probably by next year, we'll have tripled since 2010. And that's not easy to do. And it's a real tribute to the board here as well. There's very few districts that would be able to keep up with that pace of growth and keep people in schools. And so it's been a real challenge, and amazing that everything is in place. On the park side of things, we're about a year and a half ago, I sat down with the board and we were doing our strategic plan, and we realized that we're about to go through a paradigm shift ourselves, not just with the community as a whole, but when it comes to parks and recreation. I think over the next decade, we'll probably triple to quadruple the amount of acreage that we have in parks, and we're going to go from virtually no district-sponsored programming and to what you would normally expect in a mid-sized community, where we would have classes, adult sports, youth sports, senior programs, you name it, all that. We'll go from Angel to a full staff of 15, 20 staff or more during that time. And I think she would like that to happen as soon as possible, because it's very hard to have a one-person recreation department. We're well past where we should be on that. So, in fact, one of the things the board approved a couple meetings ago was their first commission. Up until now, all the board committees have been with a board member chairing the committee and then some members of the public involved, mostly ad hoc committees. Right now, really public safety, youth, and transportation are the only three committees we have, but those are more board driven. And given this evolution in Parks and Recreation that we see coming, the district is going to be establishing their first commission as a Parks and Rec commission, and we're bringing back some of the bylaws and because the goal is, with so much happening in Parks and Recreation, we really need to bring on people from the community who have expertise as well, so that it's not all on the board as we make all these really difficult decisions that require a lot of community input, and we could shut down every board meeting just with recreation. So we need that support. Another aspect of all this has been going on the last year and a half was updating our district's parks, recreation, and leisure plan. It really hadn't been updated. I mean, there was a 2011 update, but it didn't really change much from the pre-construction plan, which again was more check the box, developer driven. And we knew it was time to get beyond, first of all, get beyond what the world looked like in 2001, but also integrate programming with the bricks and mortar. And so I think we went through a really good process there to talk about that. And of course, the first thing we did was whenever you're doing parks and recreation, you need to find out what the interest is in the community. And so, we asked these core questions, and I don't think you saw, I've done this in a lot of communities, and I don't think we saw much different here than in any other community. People want to be able to enjoy the outdoors. They want to be able to walk and bike, have places where they can gather and exercise, and of course, have a place for sports for different ages as well. And then as you get into more detail, we talked a lot about, what kind of facilities should be included in each of the parks, and what are some of the programming changes that we can incorporate over time, and what are the things that folks are most interested in the future, with, of course, swimming lessons being number one. And by the way, if anybody's a certified lifeguard, we're still desperate. We still are at basically ground zero in recruiting lifeguards for the summer. It's been post-COVID, all the cities are struggling, but look, most communities already have their own pools, and they have a pipeline of youth they've had in swim lessons for decades, and they have a lot of 14-year-olds who've been doing swim lessons with that community for many years. So everyone's struggling, but when you don't have when you don't have that pipeline, it's been virtually impossible to recruit. And the superintendents helped us, the principals helped us, some of the coaches have helped us, and we're still, I think we're still at maybe 3 applicants at this point in time. So I'm not sure we're going to have a summer swim program, but we're going to do everything we can to try and figure it out. But swimming, fitness, sports and wellness, those were certainly the highest rankers on the survey. We also did, I know you can't really read this, but we did 2 board workshops where we talked a lot about visioning for recreation for the future. And then that kind of translated into a vision for our parks, which then translated into more specificity into the bricks and mortar side. And I think with the real key being, right now, all we have is a portion of Central Park. We don't have our North Park, we don't have our South Park, we don't have our linear parks, and we don't have our regional linear park at this point in time. But you'll be seeing some changes under the PG&E right-of-way very soon. But I think the biggest thing we're working on now is a transformation of Central Park. But I'll talk a little bit more about the hierarchy of parks, and then talk a little bit about what's happening in those parks. Of course, each neighborhood has their 5-acre park that's adjacent to each one of your school facilities. We also, depending on the configuration of the neighborhood, everybody has to be within walking distance of the park. So in Bethany and Cuesta right now, for example, you do have some pocket parks as well. I think there's a real small pocket park in Cordis as well. Down in College Park, we'll probably end up with 2 parks. And then if you go down, I keep saying B4, B5, but very south on Central, there's a number of small pocket parks in that new neighborhood down there as well. And then, some of those village or pocket parks are very small. There's one over in Hanson that if you blink when you go by, you would miss it, but it's there. But that's kind of the hierarchy of parks in the neighborhoods. Anybody who's too far away from the 5-acre park, there's other park opportunities in each one of those neighborhoods. The overall park plan for the community, again, as you can see here by each one of your schools, there is the neighborhood parks, and then it shows where these little pocket parks are going to go. And then you can see that we've got a large park facility in the south. These are 20, the neighborhood parks are 5 acres. The community parks are 20 acres. And then the linear parks are not a lot more acres, but they're very long. You know, the Mountain House Creek is several hundred acres, and about half of that is built at this point in time. But as MHD jumps north this summer and begins pushing dirt around, that's going to be extended all the way up to Old River. And then eventually we're going to have a very large linear park along Old River as well, where Kirk's Golf Course was supposed to go. We'll also have a linear park. We'll still have the water hazards if you want to go out there with your pitching wedge and try to hit over them. They're already there if you look. But you can see there's going to be a lot of linear parks, and then one major park in the north, one the most major at Central, and then another in the south as well. So the Central Community Park, which is by far our largest park, I think it's going to grow about fourfold. You'll see the map in a second. It's not only got all of the fields, but it's going to have the aquatic facility and an amphitheater as well. So we'll just go to the specifics. So you can see, take no credit for the architecture. There's still a ways to go, but you can see besides having the sports fields and the tennis courts and the gathering areas, we're going to have an outdoor amphitheater between the fountain, the play fountain, and the library. And then the recreation center will be on Main Street directly to the east of Town Hall, so that we can create some real locus of activity where you go from the splash park to the amphitheater to the library to Town Hall to the rec center to kind of activate our Main Street. So this is the latest drawing. The areas in the lighter shade of green are what's already improved in the park. And then there's also the Mountain House Creek park included in there too. That will be done just like we did in the other parts of town, where we'll establish some flora and fauna in the creek, but then leave it fallow once it's established. And we don't want to have to mow that all the time, and we don't have the water to do it anyway, but it'll be a lot like the rest of the creek throughout the community. We're breaking this up into a couple phases for a lot of reasons. We've gotten Mountain House developers to add about 4 acres. We decided to move the community center from that little circle drive where it was kind of hidden behind Safeway, where there are a lot of other site issues with the storm drain going through there. Plus, we wanted to put all the activity, the indoor activities, close together, some economies of agglomeration on Main Street. So there was a block that was originally going to be developed privately that they're now going to be putting in an expanded tennis court area along with a couple phases of the community recreation center. Originally, we were looking at putting in 3 community centers, a large one in Central and then smaller ones in North and South community parks. But as one who's had to operate these facilities in the past, the operating costs are just brutal when you start trying to spread out. As you know, the more facilities you have, the more expensive it gets. So we thought, we're a small enough community, it makes a lot more sense to concentrate everything in the town center, and that way we don't have to have 3 reception areas, 3 cleaning crews. You get a lot more synergy that way, and we can expand that over time. But that's where you'll have, you'll have at least 1 gym, eventually maybe a second gym, exercise rooms, meeting rooms, and then a lap pool and a play pool. On that site, you could see kind of in the lower left-hand corner. And then you can see the amphitheater over on the other side of Town Hall. The area in the beige is the dog park, where the real challenge is there's no surface that really works for a dog park. So we're just going to flip a coin and try to there's nothing more challenging than figuring out what surface to put in a dog park. You can see a 4-plex of Little League fields behind the expansion of the tennis courts, which were moved off of Byron Highway. We didn't think it really made sense to have tennis courts right up against Byron Highway. We want to have all your tennis courts in one place. And then we've got multi-purpose fields where we can have 2 full cricket pitches and then 3 to 6 additional soccer fields as well. And then we have a lot of demand for covered shelters. So the shelters would be all in that area south, or that's not south, that would be east of the cricket pitches. And eventually, if we ever build a police substation, we would put it over there at the corner of Byron Highway instead of plopping it between the tennis courts and the Little League fields. So this is the latest, greatest. The next phase is going to be the dog park, the amphitheater, and the first 6 of the 9 additional tennis courts. And then we're doing some, depending how development goes, my goal is to have all those 3 first phase items under construction by next spring, and then have the design and development work done for the balance of the park in 2023 and be under construction in 2024. And so hopefully by the summer of 25, which is like tomorrow, we have our pool facility and year-round pool facility and all those other activities. So it does give us a little time to get ready with all the programming, but frankly, already having the town hall and potentially the old library building, we're already seeing a lot more use of our facilities, and this will just makes my head hurt to think about how much more we'll have going on in the next couple of years. This is a little better shot of the amphitheater. I think it's something that would come in real handy for the school. We're going to do some field trips of other facilities real soon. There's one in Morgan Hill that looks almost identical to this, for example, and it would hold about 2,500 people. It doesn't look like a large area. It doesn't look like that much of a slope until you stand out there, but I think you can get a general slope in about 2,500 people for different types of events. And then we've moved the rec center, so the configurations can be a little different, but you can see the gymnasium. We probably set up where we have room to expand to a second gymnasium, along with the locker rooms for the pool, and then classrooms and fitness rooms as well. And again, that would probably be done in multiple phases, probably have a senior center room in there as well. Depends on what happens with the senior housing up in the north, and then potentially a play area. The North Community Park is going to be, again, on the old golf course area in that green belt there, about 20 acres. Originally, they had it in an inferior site, and so in the updated plan, we're putting it where people can actually get to it instead of being buried behind the bridge, which will be going somewhere soon within the next year or so. Nobody can find the original plans to sign off on anymore. It's one of those fun challenges. I think we've moved twice since they built that. It's a great view from up there, if you've ever been up there, though. And so the North Park, you're looking at picnic shelters, maybe a nature area, and then the real focus of the North and South Park is going to be playfields. So you can see Neighborhood J is going to be breaking ground this summer. Since you didn't have a school there, there's no name for it yet. I guess it's Old River Neighborhood up there in K, right? Isn't that what you were going to name K? And then L's Moore's Landing, right? All right, I got it memorized now. And the senior housing is on all the amenity lots along the lakes and the open space. And then the family market rate housing is in the other areas. So you can see you'll have only senior or only market rate within each individual subdivision, but overall you'll have a mix of uses. That large brown area in the middle will likely be a higher density senior or active adult, as we call it now, project. And there may be a private senior center, pickleball courts, or it's still not clear. Typically, when you do these active adult neighborhoods nowadays, you don't do the golf courses anymore, but you still do a lot of amenity within that neighborhood. So that's when the senior center may end up there as well. You can also see on the right side, there's also a 5-acre neighborhood park, not attached to a school, since there's no school in Neighborhood J. So as you recall, J and K, it used to be J was going to be all senior. Now it's going to be half senior, as is K half senior. So you just have one school for 2 neighborhoods. The blue area in the right-hand corner we're planning right now. You can see where Mountain House Creek goes along the edge of there. And that blue PF will be where we would have parking for the creek, and that's likely where we're designing a second fire station for up in that area as well right now. And the pedestrian, there, if you walk out there, you'll see where it looked like the road was going to go under a bridge for the golf course, and that's all going to get changed too. Before they were going to have it where you could get from I to J. So this is zooming in. There's still a lot more design development, but the goal would be to be able to have 5 or 6 soccer fields and at least 1 cricket pitch on this site. And again, the community center is probably eliminated at this point in time, but we'll probably have basketball courts, and given the seniors up there, potentially pickleball courts as well. We just had a long talk with the U.S. Tennis Association, and the pickleball and tennis people like to be apart. So I think that's what we're looking at now. And this is some more drawings. This is the north. And then the South Community Park is going to be very, very similar with the focus being on, again, active outdoor lighted activities. This is from the master plan. The original plan was for about 38 acres. That's way more than we can afford. And so this is going to get knocked down to about 21, 22 acres. It also includes the gas pipeline and the PG&E pipeline in it. So it'll probably be a little over 20 acres, including those areas. But again, play fields, basketball courts, parking areas, lighted fields. One of the things we're looking at, given that it may take some time to get that done, is we've gotten one of the developers to give us enough money to at least put in maybe a cricket pitch before we build the rest of the park. So knowing the demand that we have for cricket, and thank you for building one up at Costa, but we're going to update this master plan with the new configuration and maybe put in no restrooms, no lighting, but at least get the turf going for having one more cricket pitch than we have now, which is none, because it doesn't really count up there at the field. So we're looking at fast tracking one little bit of South Community Park, and the rest of it, again, is really timing depending on when the rest of the development happens down there, but sometime in the next 4 to 5 years for both these parks, with the big push being on Central Park over the next year or two, because pretty much everything surrounding that park is built out now. And then the old river and creek, as I said, all of Mountain House Creek and then up along the river, it's going to end up being about 160 acres with bike and walking paths, and really going to be important. We'll have nature trails. We will have some areas where you can park, so you don't have to go all the way from Bethany up to the river to enjoy that. But that will probably be staged in over time. As Jay comes in, a portion will come in. As the old river neighborhood comes in, a portion will come in. Goes. For those who are used to the levee type walkways, that's what that'll be. And then we also have really pushed more trails, bikeways. We also updated our bike and pedestrian, really did our first bike and pedestrian plan at the same time we were updating the park plan to make sure that as you can see, frankly, one of the things that Mountain House was lacking in the original plan was more focus on trails and pedestrians. This was designed in the late 80s, early 90s when traffic engineers called all the shots. That's why you have a Great Valley Parkway 4 times the size it needs to be, and Arturo's too big, and Main Street's too big. We'll probably be narrowing some of the streets north of Byron. We'll probably still have the same rights of way you see on Main and Arturo, but there may be just 2 traffic lanes and then 2 bike lanes instead, so that we can have some traffic calming, because there just isn't near the traffic to justify these large roads that we then have to maintain. And so again, big emphasis of the bikeways are to try to get kids to the high school over time and try to better identify ways to get, put in more identifiers and signs so people know if I just pop out onto Central, I can get all the way to the high school. One of our and you can see trying to have some of these paths being multi-use, where you've got both a bike path and a pedestrian path, and then those who want to get your shoes dirty, you got the decomposed granite path as well. But I'm never a big fan of the decomposed granite. It's a great way to save money, but they just get muddy. I don't care. All the architects like decomposed granite because they go to Paris, where they've been walking on it for 500 years. So the decomposed granite after 500 years gets nice and compact, but the first 100 years, it just all sticks to your shoes. But the architects don't listen to me on that. So we are looking potentially over time for some of these streets like Main Street, Arturo, and Great Valley to maybe put some more dedicated bikeways in. In fact, one of the thoughts on Great Valley, instead of having it the Great Valley Speedway, for those of us who get woke up from Great Valley at night, is potentially to take the southbound lanes and turn them completely into a bikeway. Because if you take the southbound lanes and make them a bikeway, there's no cross traffic obviously coming from Alameda County, and then just convert the other 2 lanes to a 2-lane road, which always knocks the speed limit down about 10 miles an hour. And so that's one of the things that when we become a city and we have a seat with the Council of Governments, those are the types of things where you get a better chance to get funding for something like that. But I think particularly for the kids who will be coming from IJKL down to the high school, if they knew that they could just hop on to the Great Valley Parkway Bikeway all the way down to Mustang, I think we have a lot better shot of getting people out of cars and onto bicycles. So that's really the emphasis we're going to have with the bikeways in the future. And we're trying to make even the smaller shared use paths wider. You can imagine how much of a heart attack the builders had when we were going from 8 to, we said 12 so we could get it to 10, but I thought we were going to have to send someone to the hospital when we said 12-foot bikeways they'd have to put in. And so again, I just want to have you get one more look at the final map. You can see it's pretty straightforward, and we're very excited about being able to finish all this off over the next 10 years and create all these connections. And so nobody will say that River Islands has more paths than us at that point, right? So, so happy to. I've talked too much already. Happy to answer any questions.
Questions, comments from the board?
I've got a question. Sometime back, there was discussion about updating Bethany and other of the parks near the schools, and I was just wondering if you had any update on the updating of Bethany Park.
Yes, we just had a discussion on that at the last meeting, and we're going through an RFP where we've come up with some priorities. Central Park actually is the highest, but certainly Bethany, Altamont, and Central Park are now all at the top of the list, and it's just a matter of us going through a procurement process, and hopefully my push is to get all that done in the next year.
Thank you.
You know, what happened was what they put a lot of money into Wickland. They put all the Bethany and Altamont money, frankly, into Wickland when they were first trying to sell the houses. So those parks need to be upgraded.
Any other questions?
I would just like to, while I still have the mic, just make the comment that I really appreciate Mr. Pinkerton, since he's come on the CSD over there. The relationship between this board and that board and our organizations has grown by leaps and bounds, and I appreciate that.
Well, thank you. We'll do everything we can to continue. And thanks. Kirk's probably the easiest. I've worked with a lot of superintendents over the years, like in Stockton, 4 at a time, and very accessible. It helps make everything, you know, anytime I need to call, we can get things done. So it's been great.
Thank you for the detailed report of what's to come, hopefully in the near future, and for sharing it with us so that we're updated, but also everybody here who's here from the community or watching. And I'm excited about the momentum that we have moving forward. And yeah, hopefully, you know, we'll see those timelines happen on track. So fingers crossed. Thank you for being here.
And everybody keep your eye out. We're going to have some public Zoom meetings because we seem to get a lot of people on Zoom where we'll be wanting to get comments on all these final plans for Central Park. So,
Mr. Pinkerton, is this presentation online somewhere on the CSD website, or will, how could the community access that? Because I know I was like looking, and my eyesight is such that I kind of have to zoom in sometimes. So it would be nice if we could see that presentation. I think a lot of people would be interested in it.
absolutely, yeah, we're getting around to kind of putting a web page together as we're getting all these designs. So you're right on the cutting edge here, the latest information.
Well, I wanted to say thank you very much for taking your valuable time and presenting it to us. And I was going to ask Dr. Nicholas, since we have this presentation, could you email it to the board members, please?
Absolutely. We'll clip it tomorrow.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pinkerton.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Thanks, Steve.